start to share on screen with you. I thought that as we are in the countdown to Pesach, we'd look at a mitzvah which, although not chronologically in the right order, is actually in Devarim. It has relevance to Pesach, being one of the Shalosh Regalim. The Torah tells us, you shall rejoice on your festivals, and it refers particularly to Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Source, first of all, we look at is actually a Gemara in Pesachim. It says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, was taught in a Brisa, that a man has an obligation to bring joy to his children and to his household on a regel, on one of these festivals. Shnema, as the verse says in Devarim, you shall rejoice on the festivals. Ask the Gemara, with what should you make them happy? We should gladden them. With wine. Okay, so that's the first opinion in the Gemara. Gemara goes on and says, Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, so that seems to be the first opinion. Seems to be for everybody. So for children and for all members of the household, give them wine, and that fulfills the mitzvah. However, so Rabbi Yehuda says, "Anashim borei lahem." They've got to be a bit more specific. The way to bring joy is different for different people. So, for example, for women, you give them what you do for them. For men, you do what would give them joy. For nashim, and for women, you do what's right for them. And nashim b'rehem, what is it that brings joy to men? B'yayin, with wine. But nashim b'mai, and what about for women? What do we give them? So it says Gemara, Tani Rav Yosef, Babel in Babylon, Vigdei Tzivonim. They used to give them what they would, the sense of joy for Yom Tov was to give them colorful clothing. New colorful clothing was something that would bring joy to women in Babel. Eretz Israel, in Israel, the big day Pishtan Megoat Sin, whereas in Israel, they would prefer a new flax, garments, linen. So new pressed linen garments that were manufactured there. So new clothes, either way. So we see him make a differentiation between men and women. Mora goes on and says, Tanya, it was taught in a Brisa, Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Bisman Shebes Hamikdash Kayam, Ein Simcha Ela Basar. The times when the temple stood, the only form of joy was with the meat of the korbanos that were brought on those festivals. As the Apostle says, V'zavachta shlamim v'achalta sham, v'samachta lefnei Hashem Elokecha. They shall offer the shlamim, the festival offering, the peace offering, v'achalta sham, they shall eat it there, v'samachta lefnei Hashem Elokecha. So we see, you shall rejoice before Hashem your God. So we see the direct connection between eating the meat of the korban of that festival and rejoicing before God. However, but nowadays when there's no longer a Beis HaMikdash, therefore no more korbanos, in Simcha Ela B'Yayin, the only Simcha is with wine. Shneimah, the verse says in Tehillim, V'Yayin Nismach Levav Enosh, that wine gladdens the heart of man. So we see the general idea, which is we have a requirement, there's a mitzvah on Yom Tov to do things which make people happy. And this is codified in halakha. So in the Shulchan Aruch tells us, a person is obligated to rejoice and to be glad of heart on the festivals. He, his wife, his children, anybody who is accompanying him, is together with him. How do we bring them joy? The children we give parched bits of grain and nuts, so very simple pleasures, but also presumably now it has to be something a bit more, a bit fancy. People's tastes are a bit more advanced than that. Similar to what the Gemara said, for women you buy them new clothes or jewelry, according to a person's means. We also have an obligation to make sure that the stranger and the orphan and the widow have what to have imshanim together with those other poor people as well. So we have to make sure that everybody has what they need in order to enjoy Yom Tov. That is an obligation, a mitzvah that still applies to this day. Now, if we look at the Tur And I have to understand really what the root of this is, to understand what do you mean. How can it be a mitzvah to be happy on Yom Tov? And according to some opinions, this is perhaps the most difficult mitzvah to be happy throughout the Yom Tov. It's difficult, but fundamentally,
A better word be joyous rather than happy. Happy is an emotion. Joyous is something physical.
Okay, yeah. So you could say that, and so therefore that's why that's why the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch have chosen to express it through physical pursuits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So to be joyous. Okay. Although the question there is it a physical joy or is it a spiritual joy? What we're suggesting then is, if you're saying it's not about happiness, which is not like an internal feeling, but more an expression of joy, which is through the partaking in physical delight, is that really what we're talking about here? Is that really what the Torah meant, which is you should indulge in physical pleasures on Yom Tov? Is that really what it's talking about? Possibly. If you look at the Torah, now the Torah is the forerunner, written by Rabbi Yaakov Asher, in the 14th, 15th century, written is the forerunner to the Shulchan Aruch. In fact, the Rabbi Yosef Karo, who was the author of the Shulchan Aruch, wrote a commentary called the Beis Yosef on the Torah. The Torah was also halakhic work. He says the following. He says, Midas HaChasadim, he talks about what we've seen previously in the Shulchan Aruch, about how we bring joy to different people. He says, Midas HaChasadim, he said the characteristic of those who are particularly pious, Asher Hashem L'negdam Tamid, who are constantly close to God, and all their ways they know Him. The Esim Chasem, at the time when they are rejoicing, as Yoter v'Yoter Mevarachim Mishabachim LaHakadosh Baruch Hu. How do they express their joy when they are rejoicing? They increase the amount of blessings and praise they give to Hashem. So it's although you're right in saying that our rejoicing is through the physical pleasures, the Torah seems to tell us that it's merely a means to an end. That it's there as enabling us through enjoying the physical aspects of life, that brings us to bless God and to praise God more. Ashes smacha, because ultimately we recognize that God is the source of that joy, of that happiness. And that's what a person says, and a person will say in their heart at the time when they're rejoicing and benefiting from all these worldly pleasures. They will say to themselves, if this is joy in this world, which ultimately we know, as Shalom Melech says, is Hevel is vanity. I mean, it's ephemeral, it's fleeting, it doesn't last. And which comes after that will be pain and discomfort. In pain, what will be if that's so? If this is the joy that we can experience in this world, which we know actually is meaningless, really in reality, because it doesn't have any long-lasting impact. If you think about it, all the physical pleasures in this world are momentary. Once we've experienced them, the pleasure doesn't linger. How much more so will there be joy in the world to come? Hatimidis, which is permanent. When there's no pain or anything, no consequences after that. That will cause a person to pray to Hashem that He should assist us to serve Him with a full heart, with a complete heart. That we should rejoice in this world and merit the world to come, in order to bask in the light of the face of the King of Life. So the Torah is saying that for halachic work, the Torah is saying something very interesting. That yes, there is a mitzvah to rejoice on Yom Tov, but it's important that we remain focused that joy is merely a catalyst to becoming more spiritually connected and understanding that there's a major qualitative difference between the joy that we can experience in this world, a physical joy which is only momentary and not long lasting, compared to the joy of the world to come, which is not bound by the physical world, it's spiritual, and is permanent, is eternal. And therefore it should be a trigger for us, or a catalyst for us, to serve God with a full heart and to pray that He should help us do that. That's an interesting insight. Now, if we look, go to the Bein Bachya, who is a commentary on the Torah, on the verse, he says the following. The Torah mentions here that the joy it has in mind is the joy with God's blessing. For it adds, for the Lord your God has blessed you with all your harvest. You'll observe that the expression simcha does not occur in connection with Pesach, the Pesach festival. Neither is mention made of bracha, blessing, in connection with that festival. The reason is that on the two other festivals, on Sukkot and Shavuos, different parts of the harvest are already at hand, i.e. God's blessing has become manifest, something not yet apparent on Pesach. Pesach is, Chag HaAviv, is the spring festival, but it's the beginning of the harvest season. So we haven't actually harvested anything yet, so it's the end of the previous year's crop, the beginning of the new year's crop. Seeing that on the other festivals, the harvest is in the home, it's possible to share it with the four categories of people mentioned in the Torah. This adds to the joy of the festival. So when you've got something with which, you've got something tangible, material with which to share, that's a source of great joy. However, on Pesach, not only has the new harvest not yet been brought in, but the old harvest is just about depleted. It is therefore difficult to provide joy for the people with whom the Torah wants us to share our joy. By not demanding joy from us on Pesach, the Torah displayed a deep psychological insight into the minds of most of us. Even though we might share with the Levites, etc., even at that time, would not do so joyfully. So even though we still have an obligation to share what we have, when it's not from the new crop, when there isn't an abundance of what we have to share, then it's very difficult for us to have a level of joy in that sharing. And therefore the Torah doesn't require it of us specifically at Pesach time, although it is in general terms, there is a requirement to rejoice on Pesach. Perhaps coming back to your point, Stephen, which is about not being necessarily happy, that we can't reach that level of happiness because slightly different on Pesach than the other festivals. It goes on and says, another reason why joy has not been mentioned by the Torah in connection with Pesach, though it does appear in connection with Shavuos and on Sukkot, the Torah mentions joy no fewer than 3 times. Sukkot, as we know, is Zman Simchasenu. It is the season of our rejoicing. It's in line with the statement in Rosh Hashanah. The world is judged on 4 occasions during the year. On Pesach, God decides if the harvest, the grain, will be bountiful. On Shavuos, God decides if the harvest of the orchards will be bountiful. On Sukkot, God decides on the water supply for the coming year. Whereas on Rosh Hashanah, God judges the fate of every individual for the forthcoming year. Seeing that Pesach is not only a day of judgment, but we do not know yet how this judgment will manifest itself, seeing the year is still ahead, it's not yet the time for rejoicing. So again, that makes quite sense, as we know the judgment hangs in the balance. We don't know if there's going to be a favorable outcome, whether we'll have plentiful grain or not. But by the time Shavuos occurs 7 weeks later, it's already become clear that the barley and wheat harvests have matured, etc. There is therefore ample reason for joy. By the time Sukkot comes around, the other 3 judgments have also been seen to be favorable. Therefore, the Torah mentions joy 3 times in the connection with that festival. Interesting.
I always thought, growing up anyway, as a child into my teens, that Pesach was the most joyous festival compared to the other Shavuos and Sukkot, but that's probably just from a child's perspective.
Right. I suppose because you've got the excitement of the Seder, the staying up late, and the different foods, and everyone being around, which you don't necessarily have with Sukkot and Shavuos. Yeah. So obviously you see how things change, because obviously the Torah is connecting it to the harvest. And if you think, in terms of a farmer's mindset, we have many halachas and mitzvahs in relation to agriculture. We've got Shemitah, we've got the 7-year cycle, we've got the Bikurim, the first fruits, Yeah, we've got all these different things because, again, it's very difficult to think about this because, as a farmer, we don't, what farmers put into the amount of work and concern and worry that goes into planting the crop, watching over it, not knowing whether it's going to be a successful crop or not. So many different things can happen to it. It's brought into sharp focus when there is a successful crop. The farmer needs to realize that it's not, as the Torah says, you mustn't say kochi v'yotzim yadi. You mustn't say through my own power, my own efforts, I've been successful. It's at that very point when we have to acknowledge that God had a huge hand in it, and therefore that should be a source of great rejoicing. When you don't have that yet, then it's difficult to say be that. It means another point here, Kabbalistic approach. So the three festivals listed here in their proper sequence correspond to the three patriarchs who represented the three attributes of Chesed, Din, Rachamim, loving kindness, undeserved, so justice, and mercy. What we mean here is Chesed is the difference between tzedakah and Chesed are two different things. Tzedakah, which we actually call charity, which is not right. Tzedakah means righteousness, what we are required to give. Chesed is anything beyond what's strictly necessary or strictly deserved. Justice, din, and mercy, allowances being made for man's inadequacy. Pesach symbolizes that on the one hand, God practiced judgments on the Egyptians when he killed their firstborn, whereas at the same time, he extended kindness to us by passing over the house of the Jewish people. Remember that God did not entrust this task to an angel, as angels do not have that attitude to extend this kind of kindness when it's not warranted by some. Interesting point. Also, we know that the Jewish people at the time of the Exodus from Egypt weren't necessarily deserving of being saved. They'd sunk to such a low level of impurity in Egypt that if God himself hadn't taken them out, they would have been lost forever in Egypt. So it's definitely an undeserved chesed that God did for us. Onkelos, which is the Aramaic translation and commentary on the Torah, translates the word upasach, which we normally translate as he passed over, as vayichus. He as in have displayed loving kindness. This is also reflected in Psalms, who struck Egypt through their firstborn. His steadfast love is eternal. Whereas this plague was judgment meted out to the Egyptians, it was a great act of kindness for the Israelite firstborn. And that's why we have the fast of the firstborn, to acknowledge that by rights, maybe the Jewish firstborn also should have been killed by the plague. So that's Pesach. It's all about the chesed, the kindness and the love that God showed to us, even though we weren't necessarily deserving of it. Shavuos corresponds to the attribute of rachamim, of mercy, an attribute which usually reconciles the opposing demands of the attributes of chesed, the kindness, and justice, respectively. This is why the sages of Baruch consider that the term utiferes in Chronicles as referring to the giving of the Torah. The Torah was given under the exclusive aegis of the tetragram, the 10-letter name, or the ineffable name of God. So we see Shavuos represents another attribute, and Sukkot finances, on the other hand, corresponds to the attribute of justice, because we know then the world is judged for water, and again, whether we're deserving on it, it depends on whether we're deserving on it, whether we'll have the correct amount of water. So with that idea, this Kabbalistic approach, which is that each of the three festivals correspond to a different character attribute, we can see, again, the joy that's associated with it, in that we can acknowledge the joy that God dealt with us mercifully or with kindness Pesach time, with mercy at Shavuos, and with justice at Sukkot time. We now look at the Sefer Chinuch, as we know, goes through each mitzvah in the Torah and gives us the reasons for it. So this mitzvah, as we said, is mitzvah 488, rejoice on the festivals. It says the Sefer Chinuch, it's from the roots of the commandment that it is because man is designed in such a way that his nature requires rejoicing occasionally, just like it requires nourishment regardless, and rest and sleep. And God wanted to give us, his people and his flock of his grazing, merit, and so commanded us to make the rejoicing for his sake, so that he could merit in all our deeds in front of him. So interestingly, Sefer Chinuch is saying that there's a basic human need to have times of joy, to have times when you can celebrate. Yeah, we all have those. We have birthdays and anniversaries and simchas. We mark certain occasions throughout our lives because we recognize that there's something that there's a basic human necessity to be uplifted by moments like that. God took that basic human need and elevated it to the level of a mitzvah and said, you know what? I'll give you 3 particular times in the year when it's actually a mitzvah to do so. And by rejoicing on these festivals, you are gaining merit because you're doing something which I wanted you to do in the first place. So here again, a great kindness that God has done for us. And behold, he fixed for us times during the year for holidays to remember upon them the miracles and the goodnesses that he granted us. And he commanded us at those times to support the physical with something of joy that it needs. And it comes out as a big remedy for us, that the satiation of joyous occasions be for his sake and to remember him, as this thought be a fence that we do not go further out than is enough from the straight path. The one who reflection without a desire to argue will find reason in my words. How it says that. So I think again that makes great sense. That God said, okay, I recognize there's a need for you to have good times and rejoice. So I will tell you when those times are, and halakha will determine how you go about rejoicing on those festivals, and we'll see a bit more later on comparison between the famous joke about on our Rosh Hashanah, on our New Year we spend a lot of the day in shul praying. Other nations on their New Year they spend a lot of the day drinking and eating, etc., etc. There's a major difference. We have times in our year when we eat and drink. And we're required to do so. However, at the same time, again, as we came back, we saw what was it in the Torah? The Torah is saying it's meant to be a catalyst to creating a greater connection between us and God. It's not rejoicing for rejoicing's sake, although there is a value in that. But if we tie it to something tangible, we tie it to these 3 festivals to remember the miracles and the kindnesses that God did to us, then it elevates it and takes it to a whole new level, and also gives it a structure where it doesn't become an end in itself, which could lead to excess, which completely defeats the object. That's very understandable. A couple more sources. Says the Shalash in the This is in Sukkot, talking about Sukkot, but again, it's worth looking at it here. So it says, the fact the Torah tells us, we should rejoice on our festivals. The Gemara we saw, as rabbis tell us, the only joy is through meat and wine. And it's written in relation to the festivals. As we saw, you shall offer the peace offering and eat it there. Similar to what we've seen before. Says the Shalah, but the kavanah of this, the intention behind this mitzvah is not that we should just fill our stomachs and benefit from the physical things in this world. Rather, we should eat and drink in order that our hearts should be gladdened with the Torah. He says that through strengthening the power of our bodies, we strengthen the power of our soul. Since the soul is connected to the body, when we do things which give pleasure to the body, it enables us to give power to the soul to take greater pleasure as well. As we saw in Rabbeinu Bechaya, Parshas told us, the reason why Yitzchak brought food for his father Yaakov, for his father Abraham, in order that he give him the brachas. Abraham says, "Go and bring me food so I can give you the brachas." Well, yes, he said it to Esau. He brought it as well. Similarly, we see in Yisro that when the Jewish people were at the bottom of the mountain, Aaron and the elders, tells us they ate and they drank. Now you think how inappropriate you're about to receive the Torah. No, The idea is to strengthen ourselves physically, gives us the ability to strengthen ourselves spiritually. And he goes on and says, he says, not like some people do on their festivals and on their appointed times. Is one who do things negative to themselves. And the things they eat and drink. And they eat too much and they drink too much and become shikah. Limshok v'yayin espesaram. Their whole thought is about getting drunk and it's about physical things. All they're thinking about is the physical pleasures. With no thought about the spiritual things. And through their wine they end up doing it. It awakens them to do things they shouldn't be doing. And they get involved in, he says, Tarian, Kederef, and Goyim, and they do things which the other nations do. You just get involved in just worthless pursuits. That's not what it's all about. Prophet Hosea says, Tismach Yisrael El Gil Ka'amim. Prophet Hosea says, Jewish people do not rejoice like the other nations rejoice. Meaning, it's not just about the physical aspect of it. That's merely a means to an end. Rather, our joy should be on the festivals themselves. Okay, and then finally the Pelayoet, we know is a work of Musa work, 18th century, I think, Bulgarian of Papo. Says Simcha. What is the idea of Simcha? How good and how pleasant. Yismach Yisrael ba'osav, who rejoice in the work of God. Simcha shel mitzvah is the joy of doing a mitzvah. I'll call mitzvah and mitzvah also yagil v'yismach yoter v'yoter and mitzvah shal rav. With each mitzvah we do brings greater joy. And particularly on Shabbos and Yom Tov, as the verses in Isaiah, as tisaneg el Hashem, then you shall rejoice. You shall in Tanug means to find pleasure in God. And it says in Devarim, our verse, what is that talking about? Rejoicing on our festivals. At what point? It says b'shas avodas hatfilah, when we're involved in the service of prayer. We should have great joy when we're involved in prayer. Why? Because the verse says in the Togacha, in the section of the Rebush, it tells us one of the reasons why we will face the Jewish people would face difficulties is that we didn't serve God with joy, with simcha, with a happiness of heart. So the word avodah Hashem, what does it mean to serve Hashem? We know avodah means tefillah. Serving Hashem means praying to Hashem. So when we're praying, we should do it with great simcha, because that is a great opportunity. Very sure, and it means, and the explanation is Sonoloma Yoter Mirav Kol. Mirav Kol is, so it says here, Mirav Kol, from the great, the abundance of everything you've got. What does it mean? That should be the motivation when we're involved in enjoying all the things that we have. When we're surrounded by the bounty that we are blessed to have, that should motivate us to thank God and to rejoice in thanking God. And it says, "V'chein v'amiros b'chas hamazon." Look up the Zohar. So similarly, when we're benching, go down in the Zohar. There's a great obligation is to say it with great rejoicing and the great heart. Why? Because it says you shall eat, be satisfied, and then bless. If you can't be great, you can't show great joy after you've eaten, then there's something wrong. Rather, it's right that we should eat and drink things which bring us joy. In order that we can say Birchas Hamazon with joy. So again, go back to the beginning. the fact that we said that the way to bring joy on Yom Tov as an obligation to do it, and a mitzvah to do so, is through physical pleasures, but it's quite clear that it's all merely as a means to an end in order to develop a greater appreciation, connection, and a sense of thanks to God, and recognition of where the blessings come from. So that's the whole point of it. Why at these particular three times of the year, in order they are sort of like the shot in the arm that we need in order to remind us that of all the good that God gives us throughout the year, and to be thankful for it.
Where does Purim fit in terms of, I mean, it's not a Yom Tov in the same sense of the other occasions, but is it also regarded as a time to be joyous?
Yeah, it's a good point. So although the Torah doesn't legislate for it, obviously because it happened after the Torah, we read in the Megillah that actually Mordechai and Esther instituted Purim to be like the other Yom Tovim, and in addition to them, there should be days of simcha v'mishteh, rejoicing and feasting, for that very reason, to acknowledge the fact that the decree was to physically annihilate us, that Haman wasn't interested in converting us, or even if we'd abandoned Judaism, he still wanted to annihilate us. He wasn't interested, he just wanted to rid the world of Jews. And therefore, Davka, we celebrate, it was instituted, we should celebrate on Purim because through physical pursuits of eating and drinking, and sending food to our friends and gifts to the poor, in order that everybody can enjoy the physical pursuits. But again, merely as a means to an end, to thank God and to say praise God for the fact that we were saved from that decree as well.
Yeah. Okay.